just kind of the sort of thing. I think most of the people who knew these women just assumed they moved on to other things or other places.
That's been what, I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever done any reading on this, but that's one of the giant dangers for people who are sex workers is that because of that lifestyle, you don't make any close bonds, so therefore nobody knows if you're not around.
Yeah, nobody's gonna miss you. Yeah.
And then so nobody realizes things like that to try to help that. But that's one of the giant dangers.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's also possible again that they might have just gone off for a couple of weeks to work a different part of town.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole thing is that with
yeah.
this one exception, which I think is likely, we do know when this girl disappeared. The rest of them we don't really know.
Yeah.
We just know when their bodies were found.
Yeah, you've got to. Yeah,
and they were all, and we should say it didn't look like they had been floating for like weeks. You know, they were relatively recently dumped and probably relatively recently murdered.
Fresh bodies,
not like crawling and gross.
Not in the water for weeks on end. Yes.
But that is important to point out. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know when they disappeared.
Yeah.
Next victim was Helen Barthélemy. She was 22. She was originally from Blackpool, if that interests anyone.
Not me.
She was found dead on April 24th, 1964, in an alleyway in Brentford. And this actually was she was the first one, I don't know if you've been keeping track of this or not, but she was the first body that wasn't found in the river or near the water. So she was the first one where the police could actually gather physical evidence that might have been left behind by the killer.
Cool. She was in an alleyway.
She was in an alleyway. Yeah, there was no water.
Yeah, obviously people find bodies in alleys much quicker because people are going through there than they do on the edge of the riverbank.
Right, but also the water hadn't washed. Even Irene's body being on the shore of the river, it was presumed she was dumped in the river and then washed on shore. Right. So the water would have washed away any kind of residue or anything like that, which was actually important because Helen's body did actually have some interesting things on her. They found flecks of paint used in motor car manufacturing or like repainting.
Yeah.
Actually, automobiles.
Yeah, and a source that I found, they actually found coal dust on her body, and I think all the subsequent victims. They found coal dust. They found red, black, and white paint flecks, or little droplets, predominantly black, and I presume that's why they came to the conclusion that it was involved with cars, because back at this time, cars in Britain were
primarily
black.
Mostly black.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so they found those flecks, and the police felt that it was, from the killer's workplace. At first they started speculating that the killer was actually like a paint sprayer in the motor industry of some kind, whether it be in a body shop or in manufacturing or whatever.
Worked in a paint booth all day.
Yeah, they thought, and particularly pertaining to the auto industry.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing is that people may not realize this, but certain applications require certain kinds of paint, and paint that you put on a car is very specific because it's got to withstand the elements for a long period of time.
Yep.
Very true.
Yep. The next victim was Mary Fleming. She was 30, originally from Scotland. She was found in the sitting position at the entrance of a garage on July 14th in 1964.
And it was a residential garage. It wasn't like it was just some random workplace.
Yeah, no.
It was some guy's house.
Yeah. And this was in Chiswick, where the police presence was actually the heaviest. They were really heavily patrolling that area. There were, again, paint flecks on her body and the coal dust as well. Locals reported that they thought they heard a vehicle backing down the street just before the body was discovered. And the police suspected it was a car, obviously. But since nobody had seen it, they actually couldn't confirm that it was a car. Yeah. They thought it probably, people said they thought it sounded like a car. I am inclined to believe it probably was a car.
I am too, but what the weird thing about a car backing away is when you get into residential neighborhoods in London, it's the house, there's the front sides, and then the alleys have the back side with the garages typically, in my experience anyway. And those are usually one-way streets. So it's really weird that somebody would be backing down it, because that means they'd have to back out into traffic.
Well, I
mean, granted, it may have been it was super early in the morning, but it's still just
the
odd.
thing that puzzles me is how somebody could hear it and conclude that they were backing up as opposed to just driving slowly forward.
Yeah.
Old cars, you put them in reverse, and reverse always had a high-pitched whine.
That's true.
I suppose there's
You know, there was always that really typical high-pitched gear when
I can
when
hear it in
reversing
my
at
head.
speed.
Yeah.
It would happen. That's why I think that people is like, oh, somebody's backing up really fast. That's weird.
Well, but I almost wonder if the killer was backing down the alley, dropped the body, and then pulled out so that it would look normal. You know what I mean?
Could be.
Back down the alley, even though it's a one-way, back down the wrong way, so that they would pull out into traffic the right way.
Or he could have driven down the alley the wrong way to begin with.
And realized
Yeah.
it.
No, so he's driving.
Because that's happened to family.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, but I'm thinking he drives slowly down the alley the wrong way, dumps the body, and continues on. And people hearing him, they hear him going, and they conclude that he must be backing up, since otherwise that means he'd be driving the wrong way down a one-way street.
That's a good point.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Although
There's
I don't
a
know.
lot of ways this could have gone.
Yeah, I guess
absolutely.
it
And
doesn't
it's hard
really
again
matter.
because nobody really saw it.
This is a pretty
Yeah.
tiny little clue anyway, so
Yeah.
let's not worry about it anymore.
Yeah, actually, so the next body that was found, Frances Brown is the next victim, the one that we find the most about. She was 21 at the time, and she was last seen by fellow prostitute and friend, Kim Taylor. And Kim last saw her on October 23rd, 1964. But Frances's body wasn't discovered until more than a month later, November 25th, 1964. Lucky for investigators, though, Kim thought that she had seen the man that Frances was picked up by, and she thought that was the last. She thought that was Jack, basically. She thought that was probably the last person that Frances had ever seen for whatever reason.
And they got a sketch of that person.
They got an identikit.
Which was a really terrible sketch.
Really bad sketch.
Really I wouldn't say terrible. Very generic.
But they also got a description of the car. They thought the car was either a Ford Zephyr or Zodiac, neither of which we have in America.
We didn't. They were a British. They were a Ford of Britain only. I was curious, so I looked it up. They shipped some of them to the U.S.
I think they
on kind of a novelty basis.
Yeah.
But they were, and they didn't have. You know, what's funny is that a lot of cars have a international companion. So there's one name here and one name there. This car didn't appear to.
They look very British, these cars.
They look very 1950s
really,
Britain cars, little
1960s,
squat, round fenders.
Yeah.
Didn't they also make these in Australia?
No, I don't know. Well, I didn't see anything about this particular line being in Australia, but it could have been. I just didn't see anything.
They were UK only.
Oh, really? For some reason I was thinking Dr. Bogle and Mrs. Chandler had one or something like that.
I don't think so.
You know, but the thing is because the car lines would be used in one country only, they could take the name, and they did sometimes put them in other places. I'm pretty sure that the Zephyr actually got used in the States like 5 or 8 years later on a different line. It was like a model for a very brief time, so they would hop from continent to continent that way. But it's a weird thing that they get away with.
No, there was definitely a Zephyr, I think, made in the U.S., but it didn't look anything like the British one.
No, and it was the predecessor to the Ford Granada.
Yeah.
So that's which is a totally different car, but it was also, it was 10 years later.
Well,
and Devin is now bored by Joe and Steve have car talk.
Oh yeah, good point.
I was just checking out my nail polish.
Well, I just want to say, how can you not use Zephyr? Because it's a cool name.
It's a great name.
Yeah,
I know.
it is.
I wish that it's the Zodiac so that at least we have a connection to another serial killer.
I know.
Yeah, if they ever make the Zodiac car again, people are going to be getting that's the Zodiac symbol on the hood all the time.
I'm 100% sure they will never do that ever again.
No, they
probably for that
not.
reason.
But
So,
back to our mystery.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's a killer car. Oh God, it was a good. Oh, okay.
It wasn't.
Keep on.
It wasn't even a little bit of a good one.
You guys are just too serious today.
So that's Frances Brown, and she, like I said, she was found a month later, a month, a little over a month.
Just over.
Since she had been seen last. And again, it's hard to tell. I think the sense I had was that investigators thought that Kim and Frances were good enough friends that had Frances been free and alive, Kim would have seen her in that time frame.
Yeah.
Well, I almost got the sense of them like living together or something.
And I think that if I'm remembering correctly, I think Frances Brown, when they found her body, it was significantly deteriorated. So she had been probably dead the entire month.
Yeah. The next victim was Bridget O'Hara. She was 28 years old, and she's the last official victim. She was found behind a storage shed. She had the same...
Yeah, by the way, I think, if I had this right in another source, I found this was a shed that actually had 2 transformers inside it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. I was about to talk about that, actually.
Oh, you were? Okay,
yeah.
Sorry.
So she did have the same paint flecks on her body. They were identical to all of the other paint flecks that had been found. And they were actually identical to paint flecks also on a transformer that Joe mentioned.
Yeah.
Bursting my bubble yet again.
Sorry.
The transformer was found just a couple yards away. It also appeared that her body had been kept warm. It was in good condition.
Yeah.
So they thought maybe it had been kept cool. But again, it's hard since we don't know.
People also say they think it might have been mummified in a transformer.
Right. Yeah. So that was the thing. That was the thing.
Something that I think when we say a transformer, what we're talking about is a big metal box, several feet by several feet that you can somebody could actually climb into. It's large enough. So not the things that are up on poles.
Yeah. And so that's a bit of a question, and I've read some places that it was mummified. I've read some places that it was in good condition and looked like it hadn't been dead for very long. I've read some places that they thought her body was kept cool for a period of time.
Yeah, like kept in a refrigerator or something like that.
So it's hard to tell. Again, I don't know.
Like somebody hung out and watched telly with the body for a couple of weeks in the cooler and then realized the conversation was really droll and we're done. Yeah.
You're just pulling all of those really fun English words out, aren't you?
I am. Yeah. I'm working. I've been watching a lot of English TV.
I'm just waiting to say boot and car park.
Not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So Bridget's body was actually found on February 16th, 1965. So there's a bit of a gap there.
Well, yeah, that's 3 months from, or almost 3 or 4 months from the prior body. And he kind of did. It was a hopscotch.
It's kind of weird, yeah, because the first bodies were found within like a week or two of each other. April 8th and April 24th.
Right, the first body was February, right? Hannah was the first official victim?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm looking at the wrong things. So Elizabeth was like 4 years before, 5 years before.
So I'm ignoring her.
So Hannah was found in February, and then nothing until April, and then 2 in April. And then nothing again until July.
With Mary.
And then November, and then February again.
October and November.
Well, yeah.
Oh, you're right. Right.
Yeah.
That's right. She disappeared, in October. In October.
So, yeah, there were some... It's weird, because you think there would be that pattern of escalation. There were 2 real quick right after each other, and then nothing for a while. So you almost wonder if maybe he actually had to just be more careful. After the third body, I guess, was found, after the second one in April was found, the police started saying things hey, we know there's a dude out there killing ladies. Like,
they ramped it up big time.
Yeah.
They actually they poured tons of cops into the area, and they had surveillance vans, like concealed surveillance vans all over the place, and they had
police
roadblocks.
Women dressed up as prostitutes.
Yeah. So they definitely took it seriously.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that might be one of the reasons the whole thing stopped. Because it makes it a little hard to get away with these crimes when there's thousands of cops hanging around.
Yeah, they really get in the way of your hobby.
Yeah, they do.
They really do.
It's time to go off and become like the Yorkshire Ripper, or maybe the
or just write the
Munich
great
Ripper.
British novel.
Yeah, find a different hobby.
Yeah,
there's always that.
Yeah. So there's one last victim. Again, it's an unofficial victim, and it was Gwyneth Rees, and she was 22. She was found on November 8th, 1963, which is obviously later than 1965. I'm realizing at this particular
You mean earlier?
No, I meant later. So she should be in there earlier. She should actually be at the beginning, too. I'm sorry, everyone.
But again, she's one of
But she's another outlier.
Yeah.
She, I can see more than the other one, Elizabeth. I think I see Gwyneth a little bit more. She was 22. She was found near the River Thames. She died of strangulation, but with ligature marks, so that was inconsistent with Jack's favorite way of just killing women. But she did also have broken teeth. So,
the other thing we haven't talked about that was consistent among all of these women, besides the manner of death and their occupation, is that I remember looking at some stuff, coming across the fact that all but one was dark-haired, and all of them, they were all of, I believe it's described as short stature, which means that they were 5'3" or under.
They all looked very similar.
Yes, and they're the one that's the blonde. I can't remember the name in the list of which one it is that was the blonde. I just remember the picture.
She looks a little different.
She actually is much different than the others. The others all look to me like they could have been related in some way. So this guy definitely had a type. He was after a certain kind of lady that was really his thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, the reason that I would argue that I think Gwyneth is probably part of this is that I think there's some escalation. I would be willing to say that Gwyneth is the first victim that he...
The first actual victim?
The first actual victim that he strangled her with her stockings, which I believe is how she died. Those were the ligature marks they thought were from, instead of, choking her with fellatio, and that it just escalated from there. Because she looks a lot alike. Her patterns, it looks a lot like something that could have then escalated into his actual MO. But that'd just be my personal argument.
Yeah, it might be the first time around. The first time he just for straight up strangulation, and then he sort of develops a new technique after that.
Yeah.
So the one other thing that I want to bring up just briefly, because I don't want to get into too much gory detail here, but I know that a lot of people are going to be saying, well, wait a minute, if fellatio is the way that he's strangling him, why don't these women simply bite down?
Bite it off, yeah.
But the easy answer is if it's if you're in a higher position than somebody and you put a thumb in the back of somebody's jaw, it locks it open. And therefore, you incapacitate that ability. So I just want to head that off at the pass, because I know a lot of people are like, well, I would just do this.
Here's the other thing. I don't know.
I mean, again,
I'm trying to think of like a sensitive way to say this, but when there's something stuck in the back, like really wedged in the back of your throat, it's hard to... your jaw muscles don't work like you think they're going to.
And that's the last thing you're thinking about. You're trying to breathe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes, you want to breathe. I understand that there is that gasp and gag reflex of, I've got to get air, I've got to get air.
Yeah.
Not, oh, well, I'm going to go on the offensive.
Yeah. It's also possible that they didn't, we don't know what the situation was. It's not as though their bodies showed great signs of struggle or anything like that. Aside from missing teeth. So you also don't necessarily know what the situation was that they didn't realize they were going to die until it was too late. That their Jack said, okay, this is what we're going to do, and
I like it rough. So
and they were like,
ready.
oh, okay. I guess you're paying me a lot of money, or you've offered me a lot of money, and then before you realize it, you aren't breathing, and you're thinking, well, surely
he's going to pull it out.
Surely he's going to pull out sometime. And then you realize, and then you're just like...
It's too late.
I'm still kind of surprised, though, that at least a few of them didn't grab some other certain part of his anatomy and give him a good
there's
squeeze.
Also, frankly, there's no way to know that didn't happen.
That's true.
There are people who are into that.
That's true.
And that's the other thing, is that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the big reason that we think that this is the tool that he used to strangle them with is because semen was found in their stomachs.
Yeah.
That is what has led people to believe that was how they were killed. But we don't know that for sure. It could be that after the fact, he grabbed their underwear, shoved it in their mouth, and crammed it down there, and in some way, that's what they choked on. We don't know that for sure.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah.
Be,
Again, it's one of those things where we don't know who this guy actually is, so there is no way to know.
And actually,
any of it.
Now that you mention it, in the case of the underwear in the throat,
that definitely had to have been done after the fact.
It would have had to, because obviously, she's not going to just sit there and say, oh, yeah, go ahead and cram that down my throat and then pack it in there with your thing. Yeah, she's not going to consent to that probably.
Yeah, I mean, so that's why I bring it. Just there's a lot of questions about that particular mode of death.
Oh yeah, and I mean, the other part too is that there were no ligature marks, so they it had to have been an obstruction of the airway.
Right.
So I guess the other thought is not all of them were found with their underwear shoved down their throats. So how else does one strangle someone without ligature marks?
Yeah, good question.